this VDS, we're going to take a look at building an award ring with parametrics in mind. So today we're going to be making an award style ring or a class ring, and we're going to keep parametrics in mind. We're going to build it up to the point where it's fully parametric, and then you can always fill in the details, adding all of the little flourishes and settings and stones and things at the end if you'd like. So let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to use the Signet builder for this. So I'm going to jump to the jeweler's bench and click on Signet ring. Okay, so we're going to set up our Signet ring. The first tab is the shape of our signet. I'm going to use a predefined shape, so I'm going to use the stone shape. We're going to go with a cushion shape for this one. And we'll set our size. I think I'm going to do 10 millimeters in the Y direction, keeping the ratio for the rest of it. And that's it. We'll go ahead and set the size in the second tab. I'm going to start with just a basic size 7. And then also in this tab, we can set things like thickness and tangencies. You have a little hotspot shortcut. If you click that, it'll take you right to the view you're working in. And we'll adjust the thickness. Kind of play with the tangencies a little bit, just to kind of give it the shape we want. So you can experiment with that. It doesn't have to be exactly like mine for this one. Same thing for the third tab's the side view. You can make any adjustments. I'm going to leave the default here. I think I'm happy with the shape as it is. And then the fourth tab would be the carving or scooping. We're not going to do that on this ring. So that's pretty much it. You can choose a material. I'll stick with what I have in here, yellow gold, and validate. And you get a lovely little signet ring ready to go. So one thing I like to do, I'm going to make changes to this later, and I don't want to have to dig through the tree to find this original signet ring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, and then back on the solid module, we'll do a clone. Okay, I'm not going to change any settings. I'm going to clone it right in the same place, and then I'll hide my original signet ring. That way later, this is still at the top of the tree. If I need to make a size change or change the shape of the signet or any of those parameters, we can jump right to it instead of having to dig through all the tree to find it. Any changes we make to it will update to the clone as well. So we're going to work on the clone. So the next thing I want to do is set my stone, my center stone. Now the Signet builder doesn't use a ring size builder, so it doesn't have the plane on top. You can create your own planes and get the same effect. So to do that, we're going to select the ring. Down in the support section, a couple of options we have for creating planes. The one I want to use here is an implicit plane. So that's this icon here. What we need to do is we have the support selected. We need to choose which side of the object we're going to place the implicit plane on. And in that case, it's going to be this top surface. And the reason we're using this is this top surface should always be there, that little flat surface. So we don't have to worry about this changing so much that our surface gets mismatched. So the other thing we might want to do is adjust the orientation of the plane so it's facing the front of the ring, be 270 in this case. And I'm going to make it a little smaller. It doesn't need to be 50 millimeters. Make it about 10. And validate that. Now we have a plane to build our top stone on. So select that new plane and create your stone. I'm going to use a cushion as well for this to match the shape of my ring. And the size is going to be 7 millimeters along the Y. Again, I'll keep the ratio so it has the same ratio as the signet ring. Now, of course, if you're building this from a very specific stone, you're going to want to pre-measure those and set it up a little differently so that it all matches. I'm leaving about 2 millimeters between the edge of the stone and the outside. So you can use that as a rough estimate. So we'll choose the material. I have a garnet in there. That looks good. That's my birthstone. Validate that. So, we may notice I've set it a little low. Let me go ahead and raise that up. So I'll just double click back in there and we're going to go up about 1.5 millimeters in the Z direction. So now we need to build our bezel up to that. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that plane for now. We'll come back to it later. And we're going to do some extraction for edges. So down in the curve section of the solid module, we have extract curves. Now, when you're extracting these curves, we always want to keep things in mind when we're doing parametric designs. that we avoid using edges that could change later. If I change the shape of this stone and I only select this edge and this edge separately, those edges could get mixed up later. So what I want to do is select the surface in between those edges instead. By selecting this surface is always going to be there. This flat surface will always be chosen. So no matter what number of edges are around here will get selected. So that's an important step. Let's go ahead and validate that. We have our first edge. To get the second edge, we're just going to clone the edge we started with, the extracted edge. I'm going to move it up about 1.5 millimeters. And actually this one needs to be a little bit higher than the stone because we need to have it sunk in a little bit to set. So we'll move it, let's go 1.75. That looks good. Validate that. And now we need to make this smaller so we get a nice taper here on our bezel. So we'll just go to the Move, Rotate, Scale tool. And I'm going to scale it down also about 1.5 millimeters smaller. So that would be 8.5 in the Y direction, keeping the ratio. And oh, not quite enough. 7.5. There we go. So just keeping in mind how much thickness we're going to have between the girdle and the outside of our bezel. You can always make adjustments to these numbers. Your stone may be a different shape or size, so you'll have to play around with this and do some pre-measurement if you want to get this just right. You also want to keep in mind what size stones you're going to be setting around the bezel. So you may have to adjust all these higher or lower. So it's all parametric. You can always go back and adjust these. Okay, so we can go ahead and validate that. And now we have our 2 edge curves. We're going to do a simple loft between these two. So select them both, and then lofting is in the construct section. Click on that. And if we're doing multiple path loft, more than 2 paths, we'll have some settings to set up. But if you're just doing 2 paths like this, it's a simple loft. No changes to make. You can just go ahead and validate. It's going to loft between the two, giving you a solid. Okay. Now we simply Boolean add those two together. So select them both, Boolean add, and there's our base ring. Okay. For the stone seat, we're going to go ahead and set that up, and this will also give us a chance to hollow out some of this. So like a traditional class ring, we're going to hollow it out underneath the stone as opposed to doing a scooping underneath. You could do a scooping and hollow it out if you really want to save some weight. I'll let you play around with that. We're just going to do a hollowing out from the top using a stone cutter. So to the jeweler's bench, select the stone, and just a single stone cutter in this case. And we'll freeze my ring so we can see inside. And we'll go ahead and set this up. So the shape tab, shape is fine. We're good with that. We go ahead to the parameters, and we're going to adjust our angle for the pavilion, and then also bringing this up. This bottom arrow will make the hole underneath wider. So we can bring it up quite a bit. We just need a little bit of a seat here. The rest we can bring down from the bottom, and this is going to allow us to really hollow out underneath that stone. So save some metal. So make sure you leave enough thickness at the bottom here. You can measure that if you want, or I'm just going to eyeball it so it doesn't get too thin after polishing. And validate. And then we will unfreeze our Boolean, and then just a simple Boolean subtract to cut that out of there. Boolean subtract, validate, hide my stone for a second for you. See, we get a nice beautiful seat. It's all hollowed out underneath. The ring still looks solid otherwise. So we've got our top stone set. The next important part of our award ring is the panel on the side. That's where we're going to set up our letters and text and any kind of embellishments, designs that we want to put in there. So let's set that up parametrically as well. To do that, we're going to base it off of that plane that we made, our default plane here. Because we also, this plane's going to move up and down as our finger size changes. We also want the plane that we work from the side to move up and down as well. So we're going to create a new plane based on this old plane. the default plane. To do that, we're just going to do a regular plane. And you see when you click on that, it places the plane in the center of that default plane. So now we can make our changes to it. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees this side. You can do it manually, or better, we can go over here and change the angle with X to -90. And then from a front view, we're going to move the center of that plane right down here on the edge of our ring, right about where we want the center of our panel to be. Okay, again, we can resize this. I'm going to say 20 millimeters for this one. It doesn't need to be so big, so it's easy to see on the screen all at once. The orientation is already correct, so we're good to go. Go ahead and validate that. Now this is linked to this plane here, so it's always going to move accordingly. So we're going to sketch our design in this new angled plane that we created. So right to sketch mode. And my panel is going to be a shield shape, so I'll use a symmetrical vertical curve and just kind of draw that in. You want to make sure that it fits on the side of your ring. Don't make it wider than the ring. Something like that. Okay. Exit out of the sketch, and we can go ahead and project that curve onto the surface of this ring. So select them both, and in the curve section, the very first tool is curve projection. We're doing a straight projection in this case. Make sure that this blue arrow is pointing from the curve to the ring. If it is, you're good to go. Go ahead and validate. And now we have our panel line on the edge there. Now to create the solid from that, we can't do an extrusion because it's a non-planar curve, so we're going to do a surface pullback. Surface pullback in the construct section. And the amount we're going to cut, we're cutting on the inside of the ring. We're not sure which is the top or the bottom of this curve. So what I like to do is I just put the same amount on both sides. I'm going to go 1/4 of a millimeter deep. So I'll just put 0.25 in both the top and the bottom. It doesn't matter how much it's sticking out one side or the other, as long as it's the same on both sides. And that gives us our panel. We'll cut that out in a little bit, but I want to show you another trick I like to do with lettering. So I'm going to go ahead back to that sketch with the shield shape curve in it, and we're going to set up our text. Okay. For the font, I recommend using blocky letters if you want to be able to keep them nice and clean and clear for printing and casting and all that fun stuff. But you can experiment with other fonts. Any fonts you have on your system can be used. So I like to type in the text before I lay it out. So if you type it in first and then run your mouse over the screen, you can now move this around. So this is 7 letters long, so I'm going to just line it up to the middle of the S, like so. And then I'm going to do another one down here at the bottom for 2013. You can put whatever text you want in these. I'll make this one a little bigger, placing it right between the 4 letters like so. And then we're done again with the sketch, so exit out. Now this time we can do an extrusion. We're going to extrude our letters through our cutout. So if I select both of them, do an extrusion. I'm just going to grab the Z arrow and push it through to the other side of the cutout. And validate, just like that. So what I want to do, instead of trying to place these letters after I cut this surface out of here, we're going to cut the letters out of the surface, which will leave the negative space sticking out. So you'll see that here in a second. Go ahead and subtract the letters from the cutout. Boolean subtract. And we see we have our letters cut through there. Now for the other side, if you're going to be using the same text, simple way to do that, you don't want to do a mirror. If you mirror it, your letters will be backwards because it is a mirror. So what you can do is instead do a rotation. So use the Move, Rotate, Scale tool. Switch to Rotate. Free rotation will spin on itself. We want to go around an axis. It's going to lock, move, and scale. That's okay. And we're going to do 180 degrees on the Z axis, which is the default. So that's going to spin it around to the other side, which keeps the letters the way we want them. keep original. We still need the original cut out, and then validate. So now you've got your 2 panels ready to go. So again, we'll do a simple Boolean subtract. Select the ring first. Subtract Boolean. And there we go. Let me hide some of these curves and planes for you. So we see we have our letters cut out. They are shaped exactly like the original surface because we use that negative space. So we don't have to worry about trying to deform or warp these letters. They're already in there. So nice little trick for you. So this is pretty much it for the design. Everything we've done so far is parametric. You can go back and change your shapes. Remember, if you change your stone shape, you're going to want to change your signet shape as well. So both of those here at the top of your tree. There's the original signet we started with. You can change your font and lettering by just clicking on the text 1 or 2 here. And we can change the overall ring size, which would be the easiest change. So let me show you that one. We go back into our original signet. Let's try a size, let's go up to a 10. And we validate. Everything needs to be recomputed, you see. And there we go. We get the exact same signet ring. Everything is lined up, same sizes, with just a new finger size. So from here, you're going to go and add your details. So if you are making a line of these rings, you want to save your file at this point and then generate your different sizes that you're going to need, and then you'll add your details on there. You could make the channel around here parametric if you'd like. So you can do that before you save off the file. Anything else you're going to want to do after the fact. So if you're going to do any filleting on edges, things that don't stay parametric, you're going to want to do after this point. So I'll open up and show you where I went with this one so you can kind of have an idea of what you can do with it. So I've taken and I've created a channel around here. I've added a little piping on the edges for some detail. These are things that will be difficult to do with parametrics. And then I just threw a clip art on the side. This is a type art object that I got online. If you have type edits, you can create those, or you can get them from Vector Clip 3D, or you can use 3Shaper to build your designs on the side. Do a UV wrap and unwrap to get that to match the surface. So lots of fun stuff you can add to your rings. So that's about it for this video. We'll see you in the next video in the video demonstration series.